Plastic driven noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when it blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangle rise. Steam fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts flow.
Hello, and welcome to the Pun Show, the show where you may hear an occasional pun. So, right now, it's something. This is a little unusual. Just want to make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to go. Hang on one second. Sorry. If anybody is there, which right now that doesn't seem to be the case, but I'm not sure if that's a Okay, there we go. All right, we're good. Just making sure things were fine in case, somebody is there and I just don't see you. But anyway, sometimes it takes a few minutes for people to join. But regardless, I will talk either way. So last night, well, let's start off with this. First thing I want to talk about, eventually, the bulk of the show today will be talking about primaries and whether they're open or closed or how they should be. I think that this is actually a really, really fascinating subject, because I don't think this is a left-right issue so much as it is a establishment versus non-establishment issue. I think that the DSA, you could say, is kind of counterpart to the Tea Party, if you follow me. It is a way for people that are unsatisfied with the direction of their party to correct the direction of that party, whether you agree with it or not. That is, like maybe not just a mechanism, but perhaps even the only mechanism by which voters can influence the party. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, just wanted to discuss a couple of other things. One thing I wanted to discuss is Donald Trump's reaction to last night's primaries by saying that there were communists that ran. And this is something that I think is he gets too much of a pass on this, and so does like most of the Republican Party, to be honest. They get very, very triggered if you even suggest that Trump is a fascist, which, as I've talked about on this show, there are literally hundreds of things he has said and done that would indicate he's a fascist. But if I'm just a guy with a stream, not a very popular one at that, I'll admit. But he's the president of the United States, right? I will admit that his word gets heard more than mine. Not trying to be humble there, just stating a reality. And so why is it that if you call Donald Trump a fascist, you're bad, but if Donald Trump calls somebody a communist, that's okay. I mean, it's a real question. Why don't people that get all triggered if you call Donald Trump a fascist, why don't they say, you know what, turnabout is turnabout? And if it's unfair to call Donald Trump a Nazi, it is unfair for Trump to call people communists that aren't communists. And they're not communists. Communism has a meaning. Communism means that you are advocating for the state to control the means of production and distribution. Nobody that ran yesterday believes that. They might be talking about in certain aspects, there should be, the state should be in charge of certain things like health insurance, not even health care, but health insurance. But that's fine. That's different than being a communist. Hi, James. Welcome from Twitter. Thank you. And James agrees with me. James says I am right. Not just right, so right. But I think that, and not just, can you imagine if Kamala Harris had called Donald Trump a fascist during the elections, or if Joe Biden had ever called Donald Trump a fascist? Can you, it would be like nonstop media attention on it. But Donald Trump called Kamala Harris and Joe Biden fascist and never got any feedback for it. I feel like there's a different set of rules for Donald Trump because he does it so often. But if the rules don't apply to Donald Trump, they shouldn't apply to Donald Trump either way. Like if it's okay for Donald Trump to call people fascists, then it should be fair game to call him a fascist, especially since he is in fact a fascist. But anyway, he called these people communists, which they aren't. And that just kind of disturbed me a little bit. I wish the media would do a better job of clarifying, if you're going to be talking about making all this issue about polarizing politics and hate rhetoric and stuff like that, maybe you should stop spewing it. You had Stephen Miller literally suggesting that if you the Democrats want to kill your loved ones, and nobody said boo about that. But Stephen Miller thinks if you criticize Charlie Kirk, then you are basically, a co-conspirator in his murder. I get tired of that. I get tired of that double standard. Like if you're gonna have a standard, but don't have a standard for the left and not for the right. Or at least make it be consistent with what the words mean. I say Donald Trump is a fascist because his ideology is fascist. Anyway, so then the next thing, apparently, I'm not going to spend all show talking on Donald Trump. I'm just going to knock this out for a few minutes, and then we'll go on into the primary thing. Next thing is the Lincoln pool, the Lincoln Memorial pool. Apparently, I did not know this until just before the show. They were mentioning it on the news. There's a Times article that, so what happened in 2010 or 12, I want to say, or 2013, under Obama, there was this renovation of the Lincoln Memorial Reflection Pool. And what happened is there was all of this water, millions of gallons of water being wasted. So they went through the normal channels and everything, and they decided, okay, yeah, we can't, we need to fix this. And there was also sinking. So they went in, they had engineers go in and put 2x4s and stuff like that to stabilize it and keep it from sinking and raise it back up to where it was level. And they changed the whole filtration system, and they switched the water source from tap water to Potomac water. And that's not where the algae came from. So Donald Trump seems to, try to mention that yesterday, and it's not true. You had a new filtration system put in and everything, and initially there were some algae issues, but they cleared it out and things were going better for a while. And then recently the the algae issue started coming up again. Not Trump's fault. I'm not saying it was. That's just nature being nature. If you let it go for 10 years and you come back, there's going to be algae there. That's the way nature is. Sometimes nature just natures. So then people were saying we need to get this fixed again. So Donald Trump got his pool guy to do it and did it badly. And he said it was going to cost $1.4 million or whatever it was. And now it's like $15 million and counting. And that's why you actually go through the process to make sure that it's competent people that are doing it and discussions are had that need to be had and everything. But one of the things that Trump did is have them switch it back to tap water, to potable drinking water. Which is one means DC is losing all their drinking water again, like millions and millions of gallons of it. But also that drinking water contains phosphates. And phosphates, believe it or not, actually are something that algae feeds off of. It's not the totality of the problem, but it was a contributory event. And, like these pipes that had been sitting around and had all the, this stuff in it. And so, yeah, that's why it got so much worse all of a sudden, is because we switched back to potable drinking water and the algae was just like having an all-you-can-eat buffet. And so this is not according to reports or this is according to people that are actually doing the work on the pool. And they also said there was like a couple of sections that had some scratches in it, but nothing that suggested vandalism, and nothing at all like a 300-foot gash that Trump decided to it sounds like he just made that up. So anyway, I'm just saying what the people who are actually doing the work on the pool said. You can believe them or not believe them. This is not from me. This is just what they said. And so you can believe Trump. You can take Trump's word over theirs. But he hasn't offered any evidence. And people that are doing on the work on it, they're saying what he said is not true. So all right, so we got some comments here. Conrad wants me to know I'm a bum and a moron. Thank you, Conrad. Original Fall of Mine says, go back to school. Brother Thomas says, intelligence is a fluid adaptation, not static dogma. Neuroplasticity demands rewriting your priors. I'm not sure what the relevance is there. Oh, this is Brother Thomas from yesterday. Yeah, Brother Thomas is. Are you like a philosophy major or something? Like, Brother Thomas is clearly an intelligent person, but maybe either A, is enjoying recreational drug use that I am not privy to, or B, going over my head. I'm going to vote the latter with this very strong possibility of the former. Like, I don't understand what Brother Thomas says, but he's not mean. He's not saying it to be mean, and he's clearly very smart and well read. Your brain constructs a simulation, not objective reality. Certainty is a cognitive illusion. Oil prices under 70 say something now, libtards. Okay, say what? Do you want to know something about like where oil prices are at right now? Is one, they were under $70 when Biden left office. All right. So all that time they were spending over $100, that it was over $100, still existed. Gas prices are still around $4 a gallon. Like, because oil prices went down, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden prices of everything went down, or that they will. Now, here's the other thing about the price of oil. That's futures. All right. That is a prediction of where oil is going to be in subsequent months. All right. It is not a reflection of the current value of oil or availability of oil. It's a gamble. It's a bet on where oil prices are going to be. So people in the oil market, some people in the oil market, we'll get to that, believe that the price that oil is going to go down. Investors think that this deal is going to hold. That's what that means. But that's not all it means. Because what happened is you had people, and there's a strong correlation that there were people that would buy oil right before Trump did something that would make prices go up, and they would sell oil right before he would announce something that would make the prices go down. So the market was being gamed, and there were people that had insider information that were making these bets based on whether it'd go up or down. So then what happened is the people that were making money, they were fine. The people that were losing money and didn't have that information realized they were playing a rigged game. And so they stopped playing. And that's the actual reason that oil prices are going down. It's like, let's say you are a poker player. All right. And, you know, betting on futures is a kind of gambling. Let's say you're a poker player and the dealer's sitting there dealing all the cards. And then you notice that, like, he's sitting there really studying the back of everybody's hands. And he wins like 6 hands in a row. And you're like, these are marked cards. You know, maybe you don't know exactly how they're marked or anything, but at a certain point you recognize he's playing with a stacked deck or marked cards or something. And so you stop playing. You're not an idiot. You're not just going to throw away your money. Okay, so that's what happened with the investors on the oil market. They stopped chasing money when they knew they were playing a rigged game and they weren't privy to the rigging. So that's another part of the reason that the oil prices are down. But honestly, that's what I say is that, so what? Oil prices being down does not mean that my food got cheaper or that my gas got cheaper. I don't have a gas car, so not my gas literally, but people that need gas are still paying too much for gas. They're still paying more for gas than before the war started. And for what? For what? What did we gain from it? They want $80 billion to pay for the war. And now gas prices are still more expensive than they were before the war started. What are you so happy about? What is your glee? This is like if Donald Trump burned down a house, then after it was almost burned down, he put it out and then bragged about the ashes. And you're like, look at those ashes. What do you say now, libtards? So, yeah, that's what I say about that. Do a backflip. So now we got Gail. My primaries should be what Inch says they are. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by Inch? All right. So I think those are the two main things I wanted to just preview before the show. The main thing I want to talk about, and hopefully whether you're on the left side of the aisle, the right side of the aisle, middle of the aisle, whatever, I would really enjoy your feedback on this. And so actually let me both on my Twitter feed and on the YouTube description, there is a link there. If you feel like you want to come on and discuss things in person, go ahead, click on that link. As long as you don't swear and behave respectfully, you can say, feel free to agree with me, disagree with me, say whatever you want about the topic. Just don't try and change the subject or, you know, be disrespectful or swear. It's a monetized program, and I just don't want to like have my show trashed by a vandal, so to speak. But if you want to join, go ahead, click on the link, and as long as you're being respectful and not swearing, we can discuss things. But if you kind of go off, if you go unhinged, then I'll kick you off. So that seems fair. Anyway, so primaries. I was watching the news this morning, and DSA did really well. You know, Mamdani bet his political capital on deciding who he think, you know, or on endorsing candidates that were against incumbents. And he did it. He was kind of like, he made sure he only did it in deep blue seats, where it wasn't going to cost them anything in the general election. And they won all three. Some people didn't think they would win all three. One of the candidates apparently may be a little, you know, extreme for my taste. I'm always asking, what's a policy that's too far left? And one of the, like, a policy that I think is too far left. You're you know, free to disagree, but abolish the police is one that I think is just silly. Like, we need police. I think we need a lot of reform, and I think we need to reevaluate how we do the whole thing instead of having police go out and do things they aren't trained to do. But yeah, people rob banks. People aren't going to stop robbing banks if you get rid of the police department. You need people to stop people from robbing banks. Like, there's actual crime that needs to be, you know, and there's racism and stuff like that in the police force. I'm not saying there's not. I am just saying it's not a binary. It's not, you know, like either police or no police. It's how do we, it's not racism or no police. Like, we need to figure things out. Oh, actually, you know what? That like another example is this bipartisan bill that they passed for the housing reform. This is what I've been saying on this show all the time. I wish we could talk about topics. I wish we could talk about problems and talk about solutions and get past the politics. And what happened with that bill that was passed with both Republican and Democratic support was a real, actual analysis of what the problems are, what the solutions are, and proves that when we try to do it, we can get past the political nonsense and get into solving problems. And I think we need to do that, a lot more of it. We need to do that with immigration. We need to do that with campaign financing. We need to get into like actual problems instead of just your party. But anyway, was I think Elizabeth Warren and a Republican. I can't think of which one. But it was, you know, somebody pretty far left and pretty far right that came up with a pretty manageable solution. But with primaries, so the DSA won these big wins, and some people are like, that's good, and some people are like, that's bad. You had people being interviewed, and in New York City, they have closed primaries. So if you're not a registered Democrat, you can't vote for the Democrats. And if you're not a registered Republican, you can't vote in the Republican primary. And some people think that's good, and some people think that's bad. And so they were interviewing people, and like one person was like, you know, I wanted to go vote in the Democratic primary, and they wouldn't let me because, you know, I'm not a Democrat. And they're like, well, all you have to do is register to be a Democrat. And he's like, but I'm not a Democrat. So why would I register? And it's like, that's fine. Nobody is saying you have to register to be a Democrat. But shouldn't the Democrats be allowed to decide who is running as a Democrat? Like, you know, I was thinking of like an analogy would be, I'm not a trucker, right? I'm influenced by the truckers union in some ways. You know, it's reflected in the price of my food, right? The truckers have to be paid. That means that if they get a pay raise, that means my food prices go up. So I could say I should have a say in the truckers union because it impacts me. And then you would say, but you're not a trucker, Kelly. You don't even know how to drive a truck. I don't. I don't know how to drive a semi truck, which is weird because it's like on the movies and stuff. Everybody seems to know how to drive a semi truck. But anyway, I don't know how to drive a semi truck, and I shouldn't be part of the truckers union. And I don't think I have any say in what goes on in the truckers union. So I'm not personally buying the whole, well, just because I'm not a Democrat doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to participate in the Democratic primary thing. Like, why should you be able to? Like, why should I be able to have a vote in what the truckers union does? Or how much truckers get paid? I shouldn't. And I think as long as there's not like a fealty test or something like to become a Democrat, like anybody can register to be a Democrat. You don't have to do something to be a Democrat other than say, I'm a Democrat. And some people don't want to say that. And that's fine. You don't want to be a Democrat. Don't register as a Democrat. Don't vote in the Democratic primaries. Well, I want to have a say before the generals. You can have a say before the generals. You just have to register as a Democrat or a Republican or whatever party in order to do that. That is one side of it. In Texas, where I live, they have, I think, another way of doing it that I think is workable and reasonable, which is in Texas, they have the primaries on the same day, Republicans and Democrats. You walk in and they say, are you voting Democrat or Republican? And then you say Democrat, or at least I do. You might say Republican. So then they give me a ballot for the Democratic primary, and I go and I vote for the Democrat. And then if somebody says Republican, they get a Republican ballot and they go vote for the Republican. They come back and turn it in. And you can only vote for one party or the other. And there's always, like talk about, oh, yeah, let's get the worst person to run. And, like people, like there's always some rhetoric about how like one party is going to go and vote for the worst person in the other primary so that, they have a weaker opponent. There's no evidence that ever really actually happens on any scale that's meaningful. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible that, a few people might do it, but not significantly. Most people are, wanting to vote for the person that they want to win. They don't want to vote for the person they want to beat. So that's another way of doing it. But I think, like parties should be able to decide, like the people that are members of the party should be able to decide who is on the ballot representing them. That said, there's another side to this. And that is that, a lot of people push back against the vote blue no matter who type thing, right? And it's not just the Democrats that have that. It's with the Democrats, you got a nice rhyme. But, Republicans are going to vote for the Republican regardless on the general ballot, and Democrats are going to vote for the Democrat regardless, by and large, except that you get some people that are alienated. They feel like they can't really pick either person. Like that's why Donald Trump won in a lot of ways, is a lot of people felt like they could not vote for Kamala Harris based on the situation in Gaza, without going into a lot of details on that. But there were clearly people in Michigan that would not vote for Kamala Harris because of what was going on in Gaza. I don't want to get into a distraction on whether or not that was right or wrong or what she should have done or whether she just, the reality is that some people stayed home. And it was a close enough election that may have been the difference in the election. And then they would say, vote blue no matter who, but, I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils. But what if the greater of two evils wins then? Because you refuse to, dirty your hands And now, like literally hundreds of millions, or like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are dead in other countries. We've started 2 wars and stuff like that because, you didn't want to get your hands dirty. And things are no better for the Palestinian people either, by the way. Not now it's not just Gaza, it's also Lebanon. So there's that, right? The lesser of two evils is still the lesser of two evils. And so I think, like there is some reason in saying vote blue no matter who, or vote for the lesser of two evils. But that said, again, I feel like there's a lot of nuance here. If you're going to say vote blue no matter who, then don't give people only one choice in the primary. Like the primary is the place where you should exercise your discretion. The primary is the place where you want a liberal Democrat, vote for a liberal Democrat in the primary. And the DNC needs to let there be liberal Democrats and DSA people on the ballot so that people can have that choice. Like I hear so many people talk about, well, we've got a 2-party system and what's wrong with that? And there's stuff wrong with things like parliamentary systems. It's very hard to get things done in some countries because they have so many parties and they're always having to worry about coalitions and this and that. So it's kind of like the primaries do the work of those parliamentary coalitions. So that's why it's really important to allow different voices in the primaries in terms of who's running. Like you have to allow different voices to run. And when you allow different voices to run, you might get different people to vote, to be like, I can register to be a Democrat, to vote for that person. And that's how you have movement in a party. That's how you went from the Republican Party under Newt Gingrich to the Republican Party under George Bush to the Republican Party under Donald Trump, because you had the Tea Party movement, and you had there was another one, the Contract with America, back in the 90s. So you had these things where you had people on the extreme primary incumbents from their parties, and it looks like we may be having a kind of a movement like that on the left now, where people on the left are trying to tell the Democratic Party, we need you to move to the left. And so like a lot of the stuff, you see people on the right sitting there laughing about the DNC's approval ratings as though the RNC's approval ratings are like really high or something. It's not like Donald Trump is the most popular president ever. So I feel like I'm going to get to the comments in a second here. I see a lot of comments, but I think that I think we need closed primaries. I don't know if we need closed primaries. I don't have a problem with closed primaries as long as the primaries aren't closed to people that are running. And anybody that wants to register as a Democrat or a Republican or whatever can register that way. I think that there is a real frustration that a lot of people have, where it's like the DNC hand selects a candidate and says, this is who you need to vote for. And there's some reality to that. I know a few people who ran or tried to run, and the DNC basically ignored them. They couldn't get funding. They couldn't even get a call. So I think we do need that. I think we need a kind of Tea Party type movement. And I think that the New York City last night was a part of that movement. I don't think that DSA can win in Texas, But I do think the DSA won in New York, and I think the DSA can win in other parts of the country. And I think that that can move the Overton window enough that we can actually start talking about things realistically, like national health care that are not extreme, that aren't you know uh, far left stuff. These are like the rest of the world is doing it stuff. So all right, go back and that's my preamble to all this, and just go through the comments. I try to read as many comments as possible. Some may or may not be relevant to what I'm saying. So, like, Large says his mother is his sister. I'm going to assume you're a MAGA. Trump is Putin's female dog. Grown men complaining online about politics is a sad state of affairs. What about people who watch grown men complain about politics? Like, Donald Trump was a grown man talking about politics online until he became president. And then he wasn't president, and he still was a grown man complaining about politics online. My husband's boyfriend put me onto your stream. Your husband's boyfriend. That's an interesting relationship. Never been there myself, would like to go. To where? To New York? I've seen too much to not know what primary means. One of the first definitions I learned at the Sober House. I don't know what you learned at the Sober House or what that definition is. Blue wave, baby. I think there is going to be a blue wave. I think that the Senate was completely off the table in 2025, early 2025. But Donald Trump has done more for the Democratic Party than Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer combined. And not willingly, not on purpose. But yeah, he what he is doing is making the case for why he never should have been elected president in the first place. And so a lot of these, MAGA curious people are no longer curious. They are MAGA. What's the word I'm looking for? Starts with an R. Anyway, for some reason the word's just escaping me. Primary is main and secondary is second to primary. Primary has different meanings. Primary colors. When we talk about primaries and elections, we're talking about the election for the party candidates. There's something called a etymology fallacy, where you try to take one word and use it that has multiple meanings and use the meaning from one place to apply it in another. And it's not really, that's not how things work. How gay are you? I am heterosexual. I have no problem with people that are gay. I don't understand why you think that. Was that supposed to be an insult or something? It's kind of a weird thing to make an insult. Blue waves are in the ocean. Red tide is also. Yeah. Where is there a red tide in the ocean? I've never seen a red tide. Love one, Trump JD. Did it? That's why you got people asking me how gay I am. 110. Anyway, you're 15. See, love one. You're 15 on the gay scale. It's well overdue for red tide and blue wave. I don't know what do you mean by red tide and blue wave? What is red tide? I've heard it's all been decades since the first premonition was stated into your picture. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. You need a beer and a Coke. Okay, I don't know what that means. I'm not Span, I'm Bologna. Or Bologna. Well, there's a meat joke somewhere. Demon crying, your tears are glorious. What am I crying about? I don't think. What does that even mean? Like, why can't MAGA have conversations like real people? Why does it just have to be like demon rat crying? Like, what is that? That's just nonsense. Billy, be a grown up. Where is Big Mike, aka Michelle Obama? Okay, now we're getting into insulting. Like, what is the point of a comment like that? Demon rats are verified from the Amazon warehouse I've seen on the sewers of New York to the whatever. Um, all right, so we're just going to skip over the idea you should if you're a MAGA and you actually want to engage in honest conversation and debate, I'm all for it. But just stop with the little child insults and stuff. It just doesn't do anything constructive. The idea you should support a person because they just represent a party is stupid. I think there's something to that. Like, I don't think you should represent a person just because they're part of the party, but I think there's reasons people belong to a party. Like, I think there is something to, I ascribe to enough of this party that I am attaching my name to it. So there's like party platforms and stuff like that. And so if somebody is running as a Democrat, they are running with kind of, I align more with this than the Republican Party. Although I know some people that are actually, we talk about voters going and voting for the opposite candidate. I know there are sometimes where you'll have candidates run in deep red or deep blue districts where they're like a conservative running as a Democrat in a blue district because they have no chance of winning. Or liberal running as a conservative in a red district. I support the Labour Party in the UK, but I would never have voted for Jeremy Corbyn in 1 million years. Just because he was representing the Labour Party doesn't mean you should vote for him. I don't know enough about Jeremy Corbyn, but I do know that you are a smart man, and that if you say that, that is very good chance that it is true, and I will take you at your word. Can you ban school, college, university? I don't like education. I will vote them. It's clear you don't like education. But if you have a system that forces coalition parties become much more willing to negotiate, because if they block anything, demand 100% of what they want, everybody just shuts them out and they get nothing and they lose support like dropping out of the sky. Which, I mean, in the US, it's just not realistic. Like, we would have to change our entire governmental system. In the US, the best way we can have more than one voice heard is by having voices heard in the primaries. Voting causes this. Causes what? What does voting cause? What about the Kibaroo party movement? I have no idea what. Oh, that must be your Kibaroo. So I don't know anything about the Kibaroo party movement. Hey, Dusty. How's it going? Been a while. Yeah, I started back and did a couple of shows last week. I've done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. I think I'm back in a rhythm. Good to see you. The only one I haven't seen come back yet is Kitty. Not there's the two kitties. One of the kitties has come back. The other kitty hasn't. Progressive sweep is the only option that doesn't land at mass violence. So you better pray progressives keep winning happening. Fornicate the DNC. What do you mean that it's the only option that doesn't land at mass violence? How does, like, play it out for me? What mass violence? Who does this mass violence? I think there is one thing about the far left that maybe, and by far left, I feel like we use the word far left for stuff that's really not that far left. Like universal health care. Like, if you listen to Mamdani, he doesn't say things that are that extreme or far out. It's like, yeah, things like you should be able to live off of your wages. That doesn't sound like an extremist to me. you know like we need to make things affordable for the working class. That's not an extreme position. Calling that position extreme is actually an extreme position. So I don't think taxing the wealthy is an extreme position. People do it all over the world. We call, like, if you imagine you're in a room and you're huddled up all the way into one corner and everybody else is just kind of scattered all around the room. And you're like, everybody else is extreme because they're all far apart from you. But you're far apart from them. How do you know who's the extremist is? How do you define who's extreme? Is it everybody else, or is it the one person standing off by themselves? I feel like the MAGA, especially the MAGA party, which is not even really Republican anymore, but the MAGA wing of the Republican Party is the most extreme political movement of my lifetime. And in terms of my knowledge of history, maybe the most extreme since McCarthyism, and maybe including McCarthyism. MAGA are extremists. When you look at, they feel like the Donald Trump should be able to start wars without anybody contradicting him. People should be able to go to jail for posting pictures of seashells and stuff like that. He's pretty extreme. And if you support him, then you are the one that is far right and an extremist. There's a reason people are still considering G. What do you mean what is G? I don't know what G is. What do you mean considering G? Oh, Graham Paxton. That one's a complicated thing. I think that there's some stuff that has been misrepresented that he has said and done, and there's stuff he has said and done that are problematic, and part of the issue is just trying to sort all of that out. But what I do know is that if what's her name wins, you've got a rubber stamp for Donald Trump Supreme Court justices, and you've got another generation of women not being able to have free, their healthcare rights protected, and you've got minorities that are going to have another generation of not being able to have their voting rights protected, and you're just going to have this far right Epstein class owned Supreme Court for another 20 or 30 years. And right now, this to me is like one of those things where you either play chess or checkers. Or I guess you should play, I don't know if checkers really works as an analogy. You either play chess or you don't, and you got to think more than one move ahead. And Paxton is problematic. Paxton would not be my first choice. Mills was my first choice. But I will choose Paxton over a rubber stamp for Trump any day of the week. But yeah, Paxton, not you were. I think you were getting Ken Paxton and Graham Plattner mixed up. Plattner, T comes before the N. He's not a planter. That would be like a thing that you put plants in. Personally, I would never want socialism, not to sound like an elitist, but I have to pay a premium for better things. I'm completely fine with it. Okay, but what do you mean by like socialism? Because there's a difference between socialism and some socialism, right? Like, do you think we should have a privately owned military? Do you think we should have a privately owned police force? And that only responds to people that actually have wealth? Like, to some degree, we are all socialists. Or at least I hope we are. Like, some things should be owned and operated by the state. but not everything. I think there is a balance between socialism and just fascism, you know, uh, where corporations decide all the policies. Uh, I feel like regulated capitalism and moderated socialism are the way to go. Like, and I would say that things that are publicly necessary and the public good belong in the hands of the public. And that includes things like education, healthcare, military, fire department, police department, utilities, things like that. That doesn't mean that they also can't have a, at least with some of those things like education and healthcare. I'm 100% fine with additional health insurance that's privately funded. I'm 100% fine with even a private security force that you pay for with your own money. But what I am not fine with is a system that decides you get health care based on your employment status and income and who your boss is and what kind of health care your boss decides that you deserve. Like, I think that there is a measure of any society that needs to be socialist, and there is a measure of any society that needs to be capitalist. And I think that we have these false dichotomies, socialism good or bad, but we never look at the actual things, right? Like, do poor children deserve health care? Or do they have to die because their parents aren't paid enough by their boss? The other lady is just as bad and apologetic to Zionists. And Plattner has deconstructed neo-white supremacy, or actually deconstructed his time as a Marine. Yeah, 20 years ago, he got, okay, he, like, if you go through, I've gone through and I can't find any actual, other than a tattoo he got, I can't find any indication that he actually had fascist or Nazi ideology. He got a tattoo of the SS war, of the skull and bones thing. And he didn't know, according to the guy that got the same tattoo as him at the same time, his Marine buddy, they didn't know that that's what it was. Now, people have argued, well, he should have known, or he should have learned. And there's this one girl that says that, he would brag about it. But that one girl that says that he would brag about it also happens to be, I kid you not, a former speechwriter for Collins, and used to work for the Heritage Foundation, and is a right-wing activist. So her word is a little bit suspect. And if he's like doing all this stuff, how come she's the only one that can remember him doing it? Why is it not a single other person has corroborated that story? She's also the one that accused him of physical abuse and all of that. So all the worst all the worst accusations against him have come from the same person, haven't been corroborated by anybody else. So a lot of the attacks on him are overstated, but some of them are true. Like, he did have that tattoo. And so he has said some stupid things, some racist things. Like, he said, how come black people never tip? That was one of the big things on Reddit that they've talked about. And that's a real thing. And he says he's learned and he's grown. And I'm willing to accept that people can learn and grow. I'm not going to hold somebody to a, I don't want to say mildly racist, because it makes it seem like some forms of racism are mild, but on the racist spectrum, which is always bad, that is on the lower end. Like, it's not like he was dropping the N-word and saying, N-words should die or something. And he says that he has learned. He realizes now he was a stupid kid then. He's grown out of that. And he's actually, he participated in some of the BLM protests and stuff like that. So it's not like he just decided one morning he's going to say that he doesn't mean any of that anymore. He's had a transition in his life. And if we're not going to allow for the fact that people can grow and learn, what is even the point of discourse? If I'm not going to allow that people can change their mind on something, what is the point of even having this streaming broadcast? Because I don't want an echo chamber. I'm not out here trying to get an echo chamber. I'm trying to like persuade people. And that's a problem. And I'm also trying to learn. I try to learn with every episode. And I discuss what I learned. And I learned from some of you. I've learned some things from Harry. So anyway, I think that Plattner, I don't think he's perfect. He wasn't my first choice, but I still think he's better than Collins, and I don't think he's a Nazi. It's a micro. So somebody says, "Do you come to Thailand?" No, I've never been to Thailand. It's a microcosm of what is wrong with all of American politics. But there was somebody else. The state of Maine chose not to go with and it's not like Mills was a nobody. Mills was the former governor. So it's not like people had never heard of her. From the outside looking, and I think Chuck Schumer has done an awful job to the disunity within the Democratic Party Chuck Schumer is really not doing well. I think that I wonder if maybe Cory Booker maybe should be the majority leader. It's hard to say because he's still more establishment, but I think he's maybe more respected. And I don't think that you can just like replace it with like Bernie Sanders, who's not even a Democrat. So Dusty asked Cabario, what is socialism definition to you? Which I think is important. There is no unified message they're sending other than we don't like Trump, which is all well and good, but you also need policies, and none of them agree with what the policies should be. 5 months and still 0 arrests. Oh, hey, Colonel Olds. Got to get used to calling you your name. Colonel Olds says 5 months and still 0 arrests. Make sure to pay your taxes, though, or you are going to jail. So he's talking about Epstein. And yeah, it's sad that we still do not have a single person other than what's her name playing with puppies in prison. How do you feel about transhumans? I feel good about your cat. To me, socialism means incompetent government owns and operates all facilities. More taxes, less money. That's not what socialism means. I mean, if you're against incompetent government, then you should look at the White House right now and the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. That's a perfect example of incompetence. Socialism actually doesn't mean the government owns everything. Socialism means the workers own things. Have you listened to the Malcolm X's thoughts on socialism or King's? Have you considered that not every stream has to follow one rule like housing built by communism? Or every system has to follow one rule like housing built by communism. The government, perhaps military via taxation, then companies being owned socially by the workers. Yeah, and I think that you typed this before I was, saying the same thing. I feel like I think some things need to be socialized, and I think some things need to be privatized. If you want to just come and talk to us, then do that. What are you referring to? Has there been any communist governments where the government doesn't own every or the majority of businesses? Yeah, but who is communist here? We're not talking about communism. We're talking about socialism. There are all kinds of countries in Europe that have a kind of a hybrid system where the government owns certain things and they provide certain things like healthcare, whether it's directly by the actual administration of the hospitals or indirectly through the payment. We're the only country in the world that doesn't do that. But yeah, you have capitalism working in Denmark and Sweden and UK, right? Like you can ask Harry if you don't believe me, but yeah, people actually own stores in England. But they also have socialized healthcare. Or I don't know if they own the hospital. I don't think they run the hospitals. I think they just do the paying. I personally think that the best thing is that the government pays for the hospital bills, but the hospitals themselves remain private. I have no problem with trans people. I don't go out of my way to talk about it, but yeah, let's like try and have a whole show without people talking about trans people. Extreme left wing is just as violent and angry as the far right. I don't know. I mean, it depends on what you mean by the extreme left. If you're talking about Mao and Hitler, then I will agree with you. If you're talking about AOC and Trump, I won't. The far left in the United States is not, like in terms of the, politically accepted far left, like AOC or Bernie Sanders or whatever, they're not violent at all. So I think there is a big difference. Dux Y says, keep going, Kelly. Great job. Thank you, Dux. Nice man. Hell yeah. Sorry about your companion that died in the swimming pool or in the Lincoln pool. Poor little guy. Vote socialist, tax the rich 90%. We used to. I definitely think that we can tax them more than like 30% or whatever it is now. We definitely need to raise the top marginal tax rate, and we need to raise the the limit of how much you pay on Social Security, and we need to maybe have a wealth tax. I don't have a problem with the wealth tax. Some people, unrealized wealth, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so what? I don't care if Elon Musk has to borrow against his stocks to pay taxes. People have to pay their taxes. They have to figure out a way to pay taxes. If Elon Musk has to figure out a way to pay his taxes, then Elon Musk can figure out a way to pay his taxes. Elon Musk has gotten $38 billion from the government. And Elon Musk has paid around $16 billion in taxes. So we are down $22 billion to Elon Musk, who, by the way, is worth over $1 trillion. Or I guess now he's not a trillionaire anymore. He's only worth about $800 billion now. But yeah, that's way too much. Like, that's enough money that I am not going to sit there and lose sleep if he has to sell some stocks to pay his taxes. Oh yeah, nice one. Yeah, dude. Keep going. Wow, I've got a cheering section here. If you know how communism in Cuba worked, people did and could own their own small businesses and homes until they got too big. It was a governmental monopoly busting. It was going well until the U.S. decided to interfere with free trade. I did not know that. That's interesting. I might have to look into that and even do a short on it. I think that's a very interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people know. And I did not know that. See, I got some smart people on my show, and I do learn things. I learned things from Harry, and I just learned something from Dusty. I have no problem with rich people, and I think the idea we should tax them at an obscene tax rate is not going to work in the modern world. And I think the idea that if someone has $1 billion, we should go take 900 million is quite frankly ridiculous. If we said, if you have $1 billion, we want 50 million, then yes, go ahead, just obscene tax rate. Yeah, I think, like things can be overtaxed. There is that possibility. I would just say the pendulum right now is not in that direction, especially in the US. Maybe a little closer in the UK. But, you have Elon Musk basically not paying taxes at all some years. While people that, and people are like, oh, well, people in poverty, 50% of the country doesn't even pay any taxes. That's not true. Some people don't pay federal income taxes, but they pay Social Security taxes, they pay property taxes, either directly through their mortgages or indirectly through their rent. They pay sales taxes. They pay taxes in all kinds of ways. And those are all regressive taxes that hit you more the less money you make. And when you look at the actual total tax package that people pay, we are a lot closer to a flat tax than we should be. Flat taxes versus, so, there was can't even remember the name. There was somebody that was trying to float like a flat tax. You just paid 10% of your income or 20% or whatever, regardless of how much you make. Everybody pays the exact same amount. I don't agree with that. Because one, taxes don't, if you took 10% of Elon Musk's money, Elon Musk isn't going to care. He's not going to notice. It's not going to affect his life. You take 10% of somebody that's making $15,000 a year, that's going to literally change their life. They can barely have enough money to survive. So, yeah. I even, my brother, he's got a degree from Wharton. He talks about, I think this is really interesting, like a negative tax for people that don't have much money. Not like a guaranteed, like some people want to have like a guaranteed monthly income or whatever, but like a negative tax to where if you make below a certain amount of money, then you get a certain amount of money, from the government to make sure that you have enough money to like pay your bills and eat food and live in a home and things like that. Well, what did Bob Banker want? Who is Bob Banker? I have no idea what Bob Banker wanted because I don't even know who Bob Banker is. Justice for Aisha. She was 6 years old. I don't know who Aisha is. Was she killed? Was she killed by ICE or something? Okay. Aisha was an 18-year-old domestic worker who dramatically died following alleged severe abuse and sexual assault by her employers. Oh, yeah. Well, I would agree with that. I'll have to look into that more. Thanks for cluing me in, Arnold. And I agree. I don't think that employers should be able to beat their employees to death for some reason. Dusty says, ducks stop spamming. And I think that's a fair statement. $1 billion we should take. 900 million is quite frankly ridiculous. If we say, okay, so yeah, I'd already read that one. I don't know about that, considering the majority of Cubans who fled to the States only have the worst to say about communism. I think he's referring to prior to Bay of Pigs, if I'm not mistaken. But that was my understanding, is that things got worse, and then once things got worse, people started fleeing. I want to open up a mall in Donald Trump's name. I want to open up a public restroom in Donald Trump's name. And I want to have a toilet that looks like Donald Trump's face. And I'll charge you like $20 for number one and $50 for number two. You can take a number two in Trump's face, or you can just pee on him. I bet I'd make some money. No good option in Maine. Yeah, and that's why sometimes you've got to take the least of the bad. And right now, and sometimes that is as crude and elementary as just what is going to destroy fewer lives. And right now, that is a no-brainer. Susan Collins has no problem rubber stamping a whole generation of fascist Supreme Court justices. And if the Republicans win the Senate, I assure you, both Thomas and Alito are going to resign, and then you're going to have a majority court named by Donald Trump. Of five of the Supreme Court justices are going to be named by Donald Trump, meaning Leo, what's his name, for the next 20, 30 years. Oh, she was 6 years old. Okay, if you can give me some more details. A far right fornication fest. The United States is currently blocking free trade to Cuba. Isn't that against liberalism and capitalism? Yeah, the United States is very selective about when they decide free trade is real. Like, it's funny. Donald Trump's all free trade, free trade, free trade. The right wing is all free trade, free trade, free trade. But then you start a trade war. How is that free trade? It'll be okay. People will make up after the next Great Depression kicks off in 2029. Oh, I don't think it's going to take that long. I think we are headed for a real severe economic crisis. Like in the UK, we have the National Health Service. But so the National Health Service, who owns the actual clinics, Harry? Is it does the government pay your hospital bills, or does the government own the hospital? But if you want, you can still have private health insurance and seek private health care. I think that's the way it is in UK. I think that's the way it is in France. I think that's the way it should be in the US. You can supplement your insurance. I think that you get some people that are sort of weird about things, and it's like, it's got to be Medicaid for all. Like, it's got to be called Medicaid for all. You could give somebody exactly what Medicaid for all is, but just call it something else, and they would like, no, it's got to be called Medicaid for all. And it's like, okay, just take a step back, breathe. I think that I think we need to figure out a way to get to universal health care. And you don't have senior citizens declaring bankruptcy because they can't pay for their hospital bills. I don't think it's that simple. We're capitalists. Okay, nobody's saying we're not. We live in a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Okay, that is a factually, objectively wrong statement. We live in a constitutional republic, yes. We also live in a democratic republic. The second part, not a democracy, is there's people on the right, this kind of libertarian sort of bogus understanding of what democracy means. We live in a representative democracy, which is also a representative or a constitutional republic. We decide to vote for representatives to go to the government and represent us. That's what we vote for. That's what we mean when we say we're a democracy. There is, back when they wrote the Constitution and they were writing the Federalist Papers, there were some times where they would refer to a democracy as being a true democracy, which is where people would vote on every single issue. And they would say that would be bad. Nobody is confused that that's what we have. Like, no, people are like, what? I didn't know that we didn't vote for every single issue. Everybody knows we have a republic. And everybody knows that we vote for representatives, not on every single issue. So what is the point, David? What is your point? We do live in a democracy. That is a fact. Why do people insist on having this argument? What is the point of that discussion? Do you think that people don't know that when they vote for president, that they're voting for a president? Like the idea that if you set up a national healthcare service, you can't get private insurance and healthcare isn't true. I think that there is, from my understanding, it's not about what should be, and it's not even necessarily about what is, but how do we go from what is to what should be? We don't have the structure in place to just decide tomorrow we're going to have like a system, like a single payer system or something. It takes time, and we've got to step our way into that. Like, you can't just jump into it. You've got to set up the infrastructure for that to be a thing that can happen here. And I think that's a discussion we need to have, not whether or not we should have some kind of single payer system or nationalized healthcare, but how do we get from where we are to that point? What is the map? What is the path to get there? We kind of have been going through repeated crashes and crises due to deregulation in housing, cowboy. We live in an oligarchy. This is no democracy. I mean, yes, we live in an oligarchy, and in that sense, you're right. And I think that ties back to the whole primary thing. We do live in a republic. We live in a representative democracy, but the people that we can vote for is sometimes like basically pre-selected for us. So you give people an illusion of choice, but not an actual choice. So when DSA wins, or when Tea Party members win, it breaks up that kind of political monopoly people have. And I think that's why it's important. I think that's why it's important that we have closed primaries. I think that's why it's important that we allow different voices to come and challenge within the party, to move the party in a different direction, so that we don't just live in an oligarchy. But like some people have been saying, we live like the Epstein class is running America right now, and that is not good. Dude, what are you smoking? I'm not smoking anything, David. I'm just look up the words. Democracy means a system of government where the people are the supreme authority. You are correct. That's exactly what happened in New Zealand. Because I'm behind in the comments, I don't know what I was correct about, but I'm glad I was right. Sorry, I don't know to win. Oh, so we have free healthcare in New Zealand. Anything you need when you need it is free. That sounds awesome. I mean, like, if I even looked into like moving to New Zealand, I love the idea of New Zealand. It's such a beautiful country. The people, everybody I've met from New Zealand is so nice. But apparently, it's not easy to migrate there. Constitutional federal protecting your country from people like me. Constitutional federal republics are a specific form of democracy. Democracy is an umbrella term. It doesn't mean one specific form of government. Yeah, the right wing like to conflate like true democracy or an absolute democracy with democracy. Like, to them, if you are talking about a democracy, it can only mean you are voting directly on every single issue, which there has never been a true democracy government. There are some governments that do have like measures that you vote on, even like in states. There are some countries where, you know, there's more, but nobody is confused that we don't vote for people to go and represent us. It's such a silly thing. And so to ask, what am I smoking, when I'm like saying circles are round, and you're like, no, dude, they have right angles. What are you smoking? Not you, Harry, but the one dude that was. I mean, that's a sucky situation for this poor kids, but I should have to pay extra for a service that I don't benefit from. Why not? That's simple. Why not? Taxes pay for things. You don't get a line item veto on your taxes. Why shouldn't you? You act like that's a moral argument. I don't think it's a very moral argument. I think it's just kind of like a whiny little tantrum argument. I don't want my taxes to pay for children to eat food. Okay, too bad. You live in America. We have a system. We have a government that makes things. You don't like it, go and vote against it. Participate in your democracy. But you don't get to just decide that children should starve to death because you don't want to pay for it. It's been so hard to parse the story about Graham. Yeah, I spent like 3 days trying to figure it all out. I had people yelling at me, like basically calling me a Nazi apologist. And I'm just like, I don't actually see any evidence other than the tattoo that he claims he didn't even know what it means, that he's a Nazi. Like there's nothing in all his Reddit posts where he was like, talking about, Nazi or anything Nazi adjacent or anything like, there's nothing ideological that he ever posted that actually, sounds Nazi that anybody can show. I asked for stuff and they point, oh, well, he said that, why do black people never tip? And it's like, that's a racist question. And he apologized for, having said that 20 years ago. But that doesn't elevate to the level of Nazi. How do you not benefit from a universal healthcare system just because you aren't ill now doesn't mean you never will be. And it doesn't mean that your mother won't, or that your children won't, or that, it like some things make society better, and then you benefit just from society being better. Whether you, even if you don't have a direct benefit, you have an indirect benefit. Because what happens if you do this? Then you have it's a stabilizer. It makes the economy work better for everyone. And if the economy is working better for everyone, it raises the floor. It makes it so that the minimum is doing better. And if you make it so that the minimum is doing better, you make it so that everyone is doing better. So you might not benefit directly, but you benefit indirectly. Like, let's say you're not on food stamps. All right. But you own a grocery store and people come and they use food stamps to buy their groceries. Or not food stamps, but SNAP benefits. And then, so you get that revenue from the food stamps. You get the revenue that goes to those kids. You make money off of that. And then because you're making that money and you've got all these other customers you're making that money, you can actually pay Bob to be a cashier. And so it benefits Bob too, even though he doesn't even own a store or have any kids. He has a job thanks to the SNAP benefits. And then Bob goes and he buys a TV from Best Buy with the income he made from his job. So the sales guy at Best Buy benefits from Bob having a job, who benefits because you have the store, who benefits because the kids have SNAP benefits. And so on and so forth. And that's what they call a multiplier. It means that the money that goes to SNAP benefits multiplies. It passes through hands. And eventually, whoever you are in America, you benefit from some of that money, from that multiplier money, from that government money. It's putting money into circulation, into the economy, and that improves the economy, and that improves your economic situation. N-words should, in fact, I don't know what that means. Do you benefit when kids aren't struggling? Yes, you do. It's a good question. SNAP makes a $1 to $150. Yes, that's the multiplier effect that I'm talking about. It's SNAP benefits are one of the highest multiplier effects. You know what has the lowest multiplier effect, an actual negative multiplier effect? Tax cuts for billionaires. Tax cuts for billionaires actually takes money out of the economy. Because what happens is the billionaires just buy out shareholders and keep it in the stock market and never pay taxes on it and just borrow against it. And then they just become trillionaires and never pay taxes. Graham is better than the other lady. I think if he wins Maynard's, need to be on his posterior about the fine print. I agree. Chicago has had reductions in crime year over year due to after school programs. Kelly, can you please make me a mod just so I can remove idiots and trolls? Um, Let me see if I can do that real quick. I um, I'm I'm not very good. I haven't, I've got let me see. Okay, here. Uh add as moderate. Okay. All right. Harry, happy moderator day. You are now a moderator. And let me go ahead and give you a buddy. Dusty. Dustin, if you want to be a moderator too, let me know. You've been around enough. I trust you. So if you want to, or Dusty, if you want to be a moderator, just chime in. But I won't do it unless you ask me to. Katie Craig let Damien see his baby. I have no idea at all what that's all about. I don't know who Katie Craig is. I don't know who Damien is, and I don't know who his baby is. Tune your internet. True, your internet is really slow. Mine, the internet has a massive gap. Is that because either that or I'm just like really slow getting through the comments? If hang on, let me try something here. I'm gonna You're not gonna see me for a minute. I'm just grabbing something. All right. Okay. All right. So I just hardwired in. So if it's my internet making things weird, then that should help. All right. I don't see myself benefiting from universal health care. The money I'm not spending on taxes will be sufficient. Well, I just think you're not very thoughtful then. No, in the UK, the government owns all the hospitals, employees, or the nurses, GPs, and so okay. So they're actually there's some countries are socialized medicine, to where they actually run the hospitals, like UK. Other countries like Canada, they have like single payer type things where the government acts as an insurance company, but the hospitals themselves remain privately run. What is your salary? Although that is the most extreme version of the National Health Services system. Most countries have to run, most countries have to run by private corporations, regulate it, and then just pay for the bills, right? Which I think, that is the way that I think the U.S. should go. And I think that's realistically the only way we'll ever get universal health care or reimburse the cost of the people, 3 versions of Social Security. If you make less than $100,000 independently, you benefit more from the taxes, but people making $1 trillion should pay 50% or more. They have gotten good at hiding it. I mean, if you make $1 billion, you could pay. I mean, I'm not advocating for paying 90% income taxes, but if you make $1 billion in a year and you pay 90% of your taxes, just period, you still have $100 million you made that year. I'm pretty sure you can figure out how to put butter on your bread. And the people that sit there and complain that you shouldn't tax the wealthy also complain that a kid might get a free bag of potato chips from SNAP benefits. And it's like, I just think that there's something wrong with someone's soul if they're more worried that their tax money is going to pay for a bag of potato chips for a kid than they are about whether or not Elon Musk is getting billions of dollars more from the government than he's paying in taxes. Call me extremist. Call me a communist. Call me a socialist. Call me a socialist communist. Which is, I have been called that, whatever that is. But anyway, under Eisenhower, millionaires at night. Yeah, under Eisenhower, the top tax was 90%, which is, I mean, that was the top marginal tax rate. So people weren't actually paying 90% of their income. They were paying 90% of their income over a certain amount minus all the tax breaks and stuff. So like there was never a point where millionaires were paying 90% of their income in taxes. But the top marginal tax rate was 90% under Eisenhower. Dumbass, everyone that works for him pays taxes. Everybody that works pays taxes. It works for anyone. Like you shouldn't get like a get out of tax free card just because you're a trillionaire who employs people. He didn't get to be a tax. Elon Musk is not a trillionaire because he did $1 trillion worth of work. But Eisenhower existed at a time when it was very hard to just pick up and move tax jurisdiction. Today, that is extremely easy, especially if you're rich. I'd love to see Elon Musk decide to just pick up and move and see what happens to all his government contracts. Elon Musk is not leaving the United States if we, tax him more money, because he loses all his business is not going to survive leaving the United States. People look at, people don't think about what are the consequences of him moving. Cuba is complicated. They would have worked with us, yet due to the Cold War tensions, we would work with communists, ever forcing them to work with the USSR and now Russia. I think that's an interesting. I've never looked a lot at the history of Cuba and stuff. I think it'd be an interesting study. America has not done well with other countries in Latin America. We feel like every country in Latin America should work in the interest of the United States of America. And we have just since Roosevelt, at least, just consistently destroyed governments in South America and Central America and Mexico if we don't like what they're doing. Got a little bit of reflex there, sorry. We are overtaxed because Democrats stealing all of it. Well, that's a completely made up sentence. None of that is true. Approximately 3,000 global billionaires worth approximately $17 trillion. If you look at every penny of it, you could not even pay down half the United States debts. Nobody's suggesting that we do any of that. That's like, well, if you ate all the spam in the world, you would still be fat. I don't even know what you're trying to suggest there. Because if you took all the billionaires and you took all their money, you couldn't pay off half the debt. What a weirdo thing. That doesn't, it's just, that doesn't do you know what a false dichotomy is? A false dichotomy is when you make an argument and then you put these two extreme positions, and then you're like, see, you can't do this, so you have to do this. There is room to tax trillionaires, more people, and not pay off the national debt. The Russian couldn't buy their sugar can, making them vulnerable to the current strawmanning shortages because of the USA. Republicans and Democrats can join parasitic twins exactly the same. They're not exactly the same. How about that's just some people want to sit on the sidelines and pretend like they're better than everybody else because they can insult both parties equally and say they're the same. That's not true. If they were both the same, then Obama and Trump would be the same. And I'm pretty sure nobody thinks Obama and Trump were the same, if they're being honest at all. What fake vote? There's no faking vote in California. Free trade until I don't like penguin. Remember how he tariffed the Penguin Island? Thanks for the specifics. That Graham is a block to complete Republican Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has been such a thorn for my entire lifetime. Obama bleeping up the medical insurance? No, Obama didn't bleep up the medical insurance. Are you like 12? I don't know how old you are. Like, people that complain about the Affordable Care Act and say things like that have no idea what things were like before the Medical Care Act. Let me just say this. The interest rate on inflation was double before the ACA than it was after the ACA. 30 million more people were insured after the ACA than before the ACA. You could be dropped for having a pre-existing condition before the ACA. You couldn't after the ACA. There is no world, there is no school of reason where you can adequately defend a statement like, Obama messed up insurance. Insurance reform was necessary long before Obama was president. Obama didn't screw it up. It was a collective effort. He did a lot of good with Medicare despite it. It was better existing. Got a room. See you, Dustin. Thanks for joining. I'm going to look into Cuba. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Cuba tomorrow. Dusty, not Dustin. Dustin's the other one. Hola, bye, Dusty. Some people don't like that words have definitions. Some people seem to not do that. Like New Zealanders pay 28% in taxes. Really? That's pretty good. Yeah, Switzerland is the closest to an absolute democracy where the people, through popular initiatives, can veto government laws, pass constitutional amendments. And I think they do it like once a year, and there's like 40 things that they vote on. But they still have like a parliament, and they still have representatives and stuff like that. And so it's not like the entire system is run there. It's more like some of the states where they have measures where you vote for it or against it. I didn't have children, but I pay for schools. Yes, I didn't have children. I pay for schools, but I benefit from schools, whether I have children or not, because those schools educate children. Those children that get education grow up, they go to universities or they get trades, and then maybe that kid that learned to read and write because of my tax dollars is now the one that's doing work on my, putting an electric panel in my house. And since he can read and write because of my taxes, my house doesn't burn down because my electrician didn't know how to read and write. We all benefit from these things. This is what I mean when I say, if society as a whole benefits, then society as a whole can help pay. What do Americans pay in taxes? That varies depending on what state you're in and what kind of taxes it has. We have what we call like an effective tax rate, which is different than like the overall tax rate. But like in federal taxes, it comes out to about 15% when you include all the taxes. And then depending on where you live, it can be another like 7 to 10%. But we benefit less from taxes than New Zealand does, because we also have to pay outrageous amounts for secondary education. We have to pay we pay more for education than any other country in the world. We pay more for healthcare than any other country in the world. And so those things are also end up becoming a kind of tax. Like the United States is, especially when you're looking at like some of the major cities, can be an extremely expensive place to live. And then that is exacerbated by not having things like healthcare and education. I know in some countries, they also, like when I was in Italy, they helped supplement things like electricity costs. I also benefit from other people's kids being taught things in school. Taxes vary depending on income level, write offs, and what state and local taxes you fall under. So, kudos to Revival. I can tell that you are a uh, intelligent person because you actually spelled very right there. If MAGA would have spelled it Verry. Yes, give Harry moderator status. Wow, I am that far behind that so it's I'm only 14 minutes behind. Either one of these healthcare setups would be much better than what we have now. Just so you know, I have added 2 words to the blocked word system, and I've asked YouTube to be strict on. So I guess I'll check in later and see what those words are. But I assume they're words that I don't like, and you know I don't like. I think the like I think the one word that I had in there was illegals because I hate using that word. I hate that word. Illegal is an adjective, not a noun. There's no such thing as unillegal. There are illegal immigrants, but there are not illegal people. People being people be using the insult communists and Nazi so randomly and wrong. It's honestly funny to watch their stupidity. And I think sometimes, like, I will say that Donald Trump is a fascist. I mean, he is. But I'm not saying that just as a catchword. I'm saying that has somebody that has spent a lot of time to studying what fascism is. And basically every single thing that is something you would make somebody a fascist, he is. You know, he's like an authoritarian figure that, you know, like just describe a tenet of fascism that he doesn't meet. Like you don't have to kill 6 million Jews to be a fascist. Building concentration camps for immigrants is fascist enough. Fed is best. Feed the kids without trying to dictate what they are fed. Why are people such control freaks about SNAP? Because they don't actually care that the kids are eating potato chips. Remember when Michelle Obama tried to get people to tried to change it so that school lunches were like healthy, like not health food so much as just like actually food instead of junk food. And the right wing lost their just had a poop flinging contest over it. They're all like, oh, you're eating potato chips. When Michelle Obama said maybe our tax dollars shouldn't be paying for junk food, then they're like, oh, you're a communist. MAGAs have no consistency of thought. It's kind of like Donald Trump's consistency of bowel movements. Wealth worshippers. Yes, they are. Temporarily embarrassed millionaires. I wish both parties were further left. So this is, I think you might appreciate this revival. My hope is that the MAGA kills what is effectively the Republican Party right now, and then the Democratic Party splits, and then the Democratic Party becomes the party of the right, and then the DSA becomes the party of the left, and then you have the 2 wings of the Democratic Party are the ones that actually iron out laws and stuff like that. And I think we get a balance of institutional government and capitalism and socialism, and hopefully come to like real solutions. I can't promise you 12-year-olds are not this. I can promise you 12-year-olds are not this immature. Oh no, they can't. I wish if Donald Trump were your 12-year-old child, he would spend his entire life grounded. He acts like a child, like a spoiled little undisciplined child. Oh no, they can do it at any time. The government has repeatedly tried to legalize nuclear power, and every time they do, it's vetoed. That's something that's worth. That's one of those things that I want to like investigate. Like and figure out the pros and cons on. I'm not sure where I stand on nuclear power. I know that in a lot of ways it's actually the cleanest. It's very clean. You don't have some of the issues with like needing battery storage and stuff like that that you do with green energy. I know that you have the nuclear waste, but I know this is like probably stupid, and people will tell me why you can't do it. But I don't see why we can't just like send it off into space. I never understood why we can't just send the nuclear waste out into space. What are we going to do? Kill the Martians? Kill the space environment? I wish we could see all the comments in context. So do I, because I'm so far behind, but that's my fault. I try to like address every comment honestly, so I get behind, because otherwise in America they would be going after homeless people to pay taxes, because in their stupid system there isn't an untaxed income. It's just they have federal tax breaks that make it up. So if you earn less than a certain amount because of all the tax breaks, you effectively don't pay tax, which is a really convoluted system. But when you could just pay, introduce tax-free income. And the thing is, even if you don't pay federal income tax, you still pay Social Security tax. You still pay sales tax. You still pay rent, and through that, property tax. Like you still, or you own your own home when and property tax. But generally, poor people don't own their own homes. They're just lucky if they can afford to rent one. So actually, poor people often pay a higher percentage of their income than billionaires. I mean, like Elon Musk is not spending 100% of his income, so 100% of his income isn't taxed. But pretty much all your income is taxed if you live in a state that taxes food, that has a sales tax on food. Bracket rather than the system you have at the minute, which is highly stupid and convoluted. We really do have a stupid tax system. Thank you, sir. I've only been hanging out about a week, and I already trust Harry more than I trust the president. Do you trust Harry more than you trust the prime minister? My favorite first couple. Michelle was up and oh man, I was that speech that Michelle gave, and then Obama, he's like, got the tear coming out of his eye, and he just kind of, how he's so elegant and just wipes the tear from his eye. I was trying to imagine if Melania could give a speech so stirring, so moving that it made Donald cry. And then I started laughing. They got that upset that Michelle Obama was trying to introduce healthy eating in schools that they legally designated pizza as a vegetable, so it couldn't be declared unhealthy. Yeah, they're, and so that's like when they're all like, Maha, Maha. It's like, just shut up and sit down. You lost your right to have an opinion on this when you yelled at Michelle. We need more than two parties. I'm not sure how that happens though. And that's kind of like where I get into, that's why we need things that happened last night, to where you can move a party through primaries. I feel like that is doing what the role of a multi-party system would be doing. I don't know how effective that can be in the American political system with what we have. I've thought about this for 40 years now, and I cannot figure out how we would make like a 3 or 4 or 5 party system work. That's why we've never had one in the 250 years of our country. Like when the Whig Party died, it just got replaced by the Republican Party. Since the first election, there weren't any parties. Since then, we've had a 2-party system because that's just the way entropy works. I support nuclear power. I generally do too. I think it needs to be very well regulated, because you got things like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, which I think would scare some people. Sorry. I have, like, sometimes I get really, really bad back pain and need to take some medicine. Harry, and why do you do? Why do you do? I'm not trying to start heat. Oh, what do you do? Sugar is asking Harry what he does. The amount of nuclear waste produced is minimal. I think because Harry asked somebody how much they make, but then he qualified that by saying if you make less than $100,000, then you benefit from tax from healthcare. The amount of nuclear waste produced is a minimal one once you're doing it at scale and constantly. Then it will be higher, but there is so many ways it can be stored safely. I don't see why you can't do it. And he's just like Homer Simpson. That's the one thing. Everybody's worried about Homer Simpson and nuclear power. You get one person, but I think maybe it's oversimplified. Maybe it's not so simple that, like one stupid person does one stupid thing and you've got a nuclear meltdown. Maybe it's not that simple. It was years ago now, but Clemson had a substantial energy crisis that they offered free online. Sustainable energy class that they offered free online, and we got into nuclear quite a bit. Like, I think we need to evaluate and utilize all kinds of energy, like wind, solar, geothermal. There's some things people are doing with geothermal to cool their house that is just amazing. Because nuclear power is the cleanest form of green energy. It produces a lot of energy that aren't dependent on the weather, right? Like you don't need the wind blowing. Can run almost indefinitely for about half a century with minor repairs here and there. It just makes the most sense. And I know people on the left and on the right that would agree with this. And this is one of those things where I talk about all the time. If we had a solution-oriented way of looking at our issues, instead of just Republican or Democrat, right or left, right or wrong, but like, here's the problem. We need immigration reform. How do we do it? What kind of reform? How do we evaluate asylum? Like, do people have a right to leave a country if they're being persecuted? If so, then they need to go to another country, right? Like, you can't just say, well, sorry, you were born there, you must die there. During World War II, there was a group of Jews that rented a ship, and they were traveling all over the world trying to find somewhere they could go. Everybody kept rejecting them, including the United States. Nope, can't get here. You can't come here. They ended up being forced to go back to Germany, and some of them died in concentration camps. That's one of the reasons that after World War II, one of the first things that the new UN did, the UN did not exist before, was establish the human right to seek asylum. And they did that, but there was some pushback to that said, okay, we're good with anybody can seek asylum, but don't we have a right to decide who gets it? Like, because anybody can just come over here and say, I want asylum, and it's just like, how do then it's like, what's the point even of having immigration laws? So then the UN back in the 49, I think it was, they gave people the human rights to seek asylum, but not to get asylum. Nations have the right to decide who they give asylum to. So if you go back, you look at United States law, United States has a law about asylum that says you can seek asylum, or, you can be provided asylum if you can, like, one, you have to be on U.S. property or U.S. soil. Like, that's one thing. You can't, by law, the law says you have to be on American soil. in order to request asylum. There's some stuff Biden did to try to tweak that, but the law says you have to be on U.S. soil to seek asylum. And then there are certain conditions, like you have to be persecuted for certain things, like race, religion, sexuality, ideology, like. And then one of the things is social group. And then starting with Clinton said so, Bush said so, Obama said so, Trump didn't say so, and Biden did say so. So every president except for Trump over the last 30 years have said that if you are persecuted by gangs in South America because you're not a member of that social group, then that warrants asylum. And people like cartels kill people, It's like, it's funny how the right like wants to make it like cartels are really bad, but everybody who's trying to flee the cartels is the cartel. Can't have it both ways. So how do you decide who gets asylum? Like that is a real discussion that really needs to be had. You can't just have everybody coming over here and saying the gangs are trying to kill me. But at the same time, you can't have people just being slaughtered by the cartels. That makes everything worse. So, like, we need to have actual debate, actual discussion, actual immigration reform. Immigration is in itself just apart from asylum, and we've kind of conflated asylum and immigration into the same thing because of Trump and his trumping. But immigration is a separate issue in a lot of ways than asylum. Yes, they both involve people coming from over other countries and living here. But for decades, people could come over here. We built this country by low-wage, bottom rung immigrants coming over here and doing jobs nobody wanted. The Irish did it. The Italians did it. Jews did it. Irish did it. Chinese did it. Mexicans did it. People from Eastern Europeans did it. People from all over the world have been coming over here for 250 years, doing jobs that nobody else wanted to do, and then working their way up and realizing the American dream. And now there is no way for that to happen. You have two kinds of visas that you can come over here for a low-wage worker, and neither one of those allows a pathway to citizenship or permanent residency. And they're like really expensive for the employer. So we have a system that encourages illegal immigration. Not just for the immigrants, but also for the people, for the employers. And we blame the employers, but a lot of times the employers are actually struggling to make ends meet. Like the small farmers that are hiring people to pick their grapes. So it's an incredibly nuanced, complex topic that just gets reduced down to stupid slogans like open borders. And we need real discussion about real immigration reform. How do we allow people to come over and do jobs that need to be done? 40% of our meat packers are illegal immigrants. Do you want to go without meat? Like, the Republicans are always talking about the Democrats want you to be vegan. Well, if the Republicans had their way, we'll all be vegan because there won't be anybody to pack meat, to process the meat. Makes the most sense. I wish. Yeah, but I mean, like, Michelle's never going to run, and part of the reason she is such an attractive candidate is also part of the reason she will never run. She hates politics. All right. Yeah, misgendering people like that, Mike, are alive. All lives matter. That's you get one chance. I see that again, and you're blocked. I do not allow hate on my channel. Donald is going to cry because Melania won't hold his head, not because she gave a very moving speech. um, Donald might cry if Melania told him who Barron's real father is. Just kidding. I think Donald Trump is Barron's real father. The amount of safety systems locked into nuclear power plants now, if you ran into it and tried to make it malfunction, you couldn't. You would think, like, after a couple of near disasters, you would, and well, one actually. All right. Yeah, we don't need that. Bye. All lives matter, but your opinion doesn't. Okay. Oh, wait. If you were thinking I wasn't calling Trump fascist, I was. I was talking about others who use the. Oh, yeah. No. I just wanted to clarify that I think he's a fascist. The all lives matter that was calling Michelle Obama a man is no longer allowed to access the channel, by the way. MAGA logic is less consistent than my YouTube upload schedule. I resemble that remark. I have nuanced views on asylum, and I personally think it is highly abused and has become a bit of a joke because asylum seeking in the UK really annoys me, and not because they're seeking asylum, but the fact that if you're a legitimate refugee, you go to the first country that would generally give you protection. I don't know how that works with the UK, and it's also like people say remain, like Mexico, that you walk through Mexico. Well, Mexico, like for the United States, Mexico is one of the most dangerous places in the world for immigrants. Like there are like 60% of people of immigrants that are trying to, pass through Mexico are victims of violent crime. And the solve rate for those crimes is like 2%. So it's like, not only is it open season on illegal immigrants, you'll never get, like, they let you get away with it. So when people say, well, just remain in Mexico, it's like, well, that's just, they went from one dangerous situation and went into another. The other thing is, a lot of these countries where, the number one reason that people are displaced from their homes is climate change. And climate change is impacting countries below the equator, like South America and Africa, a lot more than Europe and the US and Asia. So I think, I can't remember the numbers, but it's exploding, and it's exploding because of climate change related issues. Like, if a mudslide wipes out your entire village, you don't have anywhere to go. The idea that France would not protect a legitimate refugee is ridiculous. The idea that Spain would not protect the idea Italy would not protect a legitimate refugee is ridiculous. The idea Greece would not protect it. But don't those places also have immigrants and asylum seekers? You know what country has the most refugees, or the highest percentage of refugees? Well, maybe not anymore. Not now that, but before Israel invaded Lebanon, 40% of its population was refugees. I mean, some countries have a lot more refugees than we do. The only reason most people come to the UK is because they know that the asylum backlog is massive, and during that time, due to our stupid laws, they cannot work. Which means the government is forced by law to give that person benefits and welfare support. Yeah. And so that would be another case of, let's, like in the UK, change the law so that it makes sense. Like, just make it so that asylum seekers can work. Problem solved. I think in the US you have like you can't work for the first 6 months or something. I'm not sure if I remember that right. But you at a certain point you have to work, and until then you're not allowed to work, and so you're funded, and that's where you get some of the people misunderstand. We're giving illegal immigrants, we're paying them billions of dollars. No, we're not. We're allowing, anyway. One of my uncles had married a woman from, ignore that, I didn't mean to send yet. Oh, one of those accidental hit the return keys. Now the UK has took over 280,000 refugees from Ukraine. I have no problems with that because there was a legitimate issue with the UK had set up an asylum base in Poland. I think it was where you could seek asylum and refugee status. Would they be then flown to the UK from there, so you never crossed multiple safe countries? One of my uncles had married a woman from Great Britain, and they were doing all the necessary things, and it took so long that it went through the whole marriage and divorced again, and she still didn't have citizenship. Wow. So here's a story you might like, Harry. I have a friend from England, and he was on an airplane flight. He was like flying from the US to England. And so they were having a nice long conversation, him and this guy that was sitting next to him. And so then as they were deplaning, he's like, so where are you from? And my friend Chris says, Great Britain. And he says, really? Wow. He's like, you speak pretty good English for a foreigner. Thought you would appreciate that. He thought that, I don't know. Anyway, guy was from England, and the American said, you speak pretty good English for a foreigner. And that is perfectly legitimate and should be supported. It is in the United Kingdom. I think what people have a problem with is when it's just unlimited, you can come see asylum. Yeah, it's similar in the US that the asylum seekers have kind of flooded the system, which is why I think we need to have more asylum judges and reform the system. But I think you still need to allow for legitimate asylum seekers to get asylum. I also think that people maybe don't realize that asylum seekers aren't necessarily, like a negative on the economy. They can actually help the economy. But yeah, if they're sitting on welfare for 3 years because of the backlog and stupid laws, we don't do anything to control it. So then the problem is not the asylum seekers, it's the stupid laws. The Eurocranium system that we set up has not had one protest or one riot because it was controlled. Everything understood it was why it just baffles me that we can't do that. Across the board to stop these stupid riots and protests and give a legitimate concern that can be weaponized by the far right to achieve their horrible goals. I think maybe the people on the far right aren't concerned about Ukrainians, and they're worried about Africans for different reasons, Okay, that's the end of my speech. I just don't believe that people who are willing to travel across the European continent and pass through several developed and safe countries can be considered legitimate refugees. That is definitely a very different situation than passing through Mexico from Central America. I find that wholly contradictory to the spirit of the universal human right to seek asylum. But what if somebody speaks English and they don't speak Spanish or Italian? I think they should pass a law saying that if you decide to travel across the European continent for the explicit purpose of getting to the country you're choosing, you are not a legitimate refugee. I think that is perfectly reasonable, and quite frankly, if the European Court of Justice declares that illegal, they can get screwed. All right, so we know how Harry really feels. And I can understand that. But then you would get in, there's other maybe Europe needs to figure something out as a whole, because if that's the case, um, you're asking like continental Europe to take on all the asylum seekers. Kind of hard to get to England without going through another country, unless you're an incredibly good swimmer or have a boat. Um, so then you know, like Spain might be like, because Spain is on the Mediterranean there, and Italy, they're going to have to, you know, like Germany doesn't have to worry about anybody. UK doesn't have to worry. But, you know, like Spain and Italy would just have to take on all the asylum seekers. So it becomes one of those things where it would seem like there needs to be more nuance. If someone speaks English and doesn't speak Italian or Spanish, you can get asylum in those countries and go through the legal process to become a legitimate immigrant to the US, to the UK. You don't have to be an asylum seeker. It is wholly inappropriate and ridiculous. That's a valid point, except that many Europeans speak English, even if it is an official language of that country. That's true. Most Europeans speak English, but, and I'm not saying this in relation to that, as an American that's lived in Europe, I noticed nobody will speak. Nobody speaks English if you walk into a store speaking English. But if I walk into a store in Italy speaking crappy Italian, everybody speaks English. They just want you to respect their country enough to at least make the effort to speak the language. And if you do make that effort, then they will, you know, talk in nearly fluent English. 99% of the Spanish population, French population, Italian population, and almost every other developed country in the world can speak English pretty well. Most of Europe and much of the middle class speak English. I think even parts of middle or of rural America speak English. Anyway, that was supposed to be a joke. I don't know if it landed. Okay, so looks like anyway, so good talk. I think we're going to end here today. So Revival, I don't know if I don't recall seeing you here before, but if you like the show, click like and subscribe. If you don't like the show, you don't have to. A lot of my family on my father's side has traveled and lived in other countries. Yeah, I lived in England. I lived in Italy. I lived in Liberia, West Africa. I lived in Brazil. And I've lived in the United States of America. I've been around. Been to 34 countries in all. A lot of like I said, the more than 280,000 Ukrainian refugees. Oh, sorry, Mo. How are you doing? So what are your thoughts on maybe we can try. What do you guys think? Should we have open primaries or closed primaries? I still am fascinated by that topic. I think it's something we need to think about. I have at least one cousin on every continent. Wow. At least one. My dad lives in Brazil. I don't know if I have any other family that lives in other countries. Harry is really serious. Oh man. Okay. So I bet at the dinner table nobody brings up asylum around Harry. Harry has very strong feelings about asylum. I understand where you're coming from, bro. I've been here a few times and I'm subbed. I don't understand the primary system. I think it's stupid. Just have official parties with party constitutions. It's so much easier. Okay, well, our primary system is when we have a general election and we have primaries. And then if you're a member of a party, then you run for to be on the to be the representative of that party. So then, like the Republicans have their primary and they nominate somebody for, the House of Representatives. And then Democrats have a primary and they nominate somebody for the House of Representatives. And then in the general election, you go and you vote for the people, like the person that you think represents you best. It's kind of a layered nomination. I'm not familiar with it. Okay, so, but yeah, we're talking. The show today was going to be about closed primaries versus open primaries, which is like, so a closed primary means you have to be a member of that party in order to vote during the primary. Open primary means anybody can go and vote for that. The whole thing that if you vote in your primary, you are a registered member of that party because you voted in the primary. That's the general idea. And like I said, if somebody were to say, I should have a say in the Teamsters union, and but you're not a Teamster, why should you have a say in the Teamster union? Like, you can vote for whoever you want in the general election, but if you're not a Democrat, why should you get a say in who the Democrat is? If you're not a Republican, why should you get a say in who the Republican is? All you have to do is just be a Democrat or Republican. I just feel like it would be so much easier if you did what we did here, where you have a party constitution membership and each party decides on its. Oh, that would be terrible here. I'm just, people are worried, are upset that the DNC is already telling us who we can and can't vote for. Yeah, a system where the party officially decided who is running. Yeah, that would not work. That would be, you would have people on the left and the right setting fires. It would be terrible. It would not work here. It might work over there. It would not work here. I kind of feel like we shouldn't have parties. That's how we end up with Bath. Well, except the Nazis were a party. That was literally the Nazi party. Oh, I see what you're saying. With Bath, not Nazis and MAGAs. Except that I've thought about like just if we didn't have a party system. The founding fathers initially didn't want party systems. But there are advantages to parties. One, when you go and you don't have time to study up on every single person that's on your ballot. And so if all you have is names, you don't know who you're voting for or why. It gives you an idea. This guy is a Democrat, this guy is a Republican. It gives you an idea. I mean, of course, you can try and learn as much as you can, but it's helpful to have a starting point. It also helps smaller candidates. If there is a system in place, like if they belong to a party, then they can get some, it's easier for them to get funding and financing so that they can compete with establishment people. And it's not, I mean, we're already way too much corporate wealth deciding things. If we did away with parties, it would make that even worse. In South Carolina, where I live, you do not register with a party. Just go tell them which primary you want to vote in at the time. Same in Texas. That's what we do. You get to decide which party you're voting for in the primary. You can only vote for one. Open primaries here. Just can't vote in both at the same election. That's exactly what we have here. So you get to vote against Lindsey Graham, and I get to vote against Ken Paxton. High five. That story is genuinely funny. I don't know which story, because I'm behind again. No, the party doesn't decide who's running, or at least not in the Lab Party, the Labor Party. It's different for the Conservative Party because they have a centralized appointment system, which doesn't go very well. Does he know? I'm sorry, I because of the I'm behind. I don't know. Does he know what? I'm not sure what the question is referencing. The open primary thing here is kind of weird in my opinion. But in the Labor Party, each constituency party has a set of people who put themselves forward to be the nominees for that constituent from the Labor Party. But then it's still the party decides what things are, and so then people can't influence the party. The party is picking the candidate, not the voters. Like the voters should pick the candidate. That would be like the voters should pick the candidate, not the party. That would be the American system response to that. Each of the constituency parties there hold internal elections to decide which of the candidates will be the official party candidates. But then you've walled off, and blocked out anybody that you don't like. Like you've made it so that somebody can't cause the party to shift, which means that it's less flexible. That's a tough question. Fornicate Lindsey Graham. Yeah, the party decide who their candidate is for each of their constituencies they're running in. I like so what happened like in 2016, a lot of people felt like Hillary Clinton basically was designated the candidate before there was ever even a primary. And there was some truth to that, but also Hillary Clinton was the one that brought the money. The DNC was almost bankrupt and she brought in tons of cash. Basically saved the Democratic Party from bankruptcy. Um, and so there's that, but there's still a lot of resentment. Like like a lot of people on the left feel like the DNC is saying this is your candidate, and then vote blue no matter who, and you have to vote for this person or you're a fascist. Which is, like David Hogg was trying to sorry fight that from the inside, and then he got kind of booted out. So that would definitely be counterproductive. If the Democrats just said, "Yeah, we're not going to have primaries anymore. We're just going to tell you who the candidates are," there would be some feces slinging. In the UK, to get a vote in the party, you have to be a member of the party. Oh, which usually has a membership fee of like £5 a month at its highest for the Labour Party. Wow. Yeah. That. Whoa. My goodness. That is a big difference. Yeah, that would never fly here. Hillary would have been a great president. Hillary would have been a great president. I still voted Bernie at the time. I think Hillary's going to run. I think Hillary's done. She criticized, she's like told Biden, he should have never run for a second term, and now she's the same age as he was then. So I don't think she's running again. I don't know who's going to, it looks like maybe if I were to go out on a limb and predict who the 2028 nominee from the Democratic Party would be, it would be Gavin Newsom. I think he's maybe the front runner. If I got a chance to choose who I'd like to see, it would be John Ossoff. It. I think there's some people that are like, "Oh, I can't be a woman," and I don't have an issue with that. It's like, well, we tried it twice and women lost both times. Well, you know what? Every single other election, men have lost. Like it's 0 for 2 is hardly like it's a small sample size. It just has to be both situations were unique situations. Um, Like Hillary Clinton, they had spent a quarter of a century and hundreds of millions of dollars smashing Hillary Clinton and her husband. And you could ask people what is wrong with Hillary Clinton, and they would either tell you one, something that was debunked, or say, I just don't like her. And that was just the resonance of decades of hate being spewed. And so then, even if you don't accept all the um, actual talking points about her, the residue of the hatred stuck with some people. So I think that prevented Hillary from winning. With Kamala Harris, I think there was one. I think too much blame was put on Biden for the inflation. I think that there was the whole open borders thing, which was all a fake talking point. That the media amplified both of those talking points, and then somehow Kamala Harris became responsible for all that. On October 7th, Hamas went in and massacred a bunch of Israelites. And then Israel responded by committing genocide. And that was a no-win situation, regardless of which way you went. And somehow Kamala Harris was to blame for what Bibi did. And if Joe Biden had not funded Israel, then it would have been a whole different group of people that would have stayed home and not voted or just voted for Trump. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like the Democrats lost the election on October 7th. Anyway, I don't think Hillary will run. I'm hoping Ossoff. You know, who knows? Maybe AOC. Maybe an Ossoff AOC ticket. Bernie and wish Hillary would have run with him. You know, that's not. I think if you had like a center left Democrat like Ossoff and a DSA vice president running mate to as a nod to the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, I think you might win in a landslide. During the 2024 election cycles, the U.S. spent roughly $42.91 per capita, compared to just $1.78 per capita in the UK. And most of that $42.91 was people like Elon Musk. Hello, Wisconsin. I know he running for president anymore. Ex-Governor Tommy Thompson. He had too many terms in Wisconsin there. Wisconsin 3. That's another. I don't know too much about him, but there's another possibility that, like, if you were to ask in 2006 who was going to be the 2008 nominee for the Democrats, nobody would have said Barack Obama. If you asked in 1988 or 1990 who the 1992 candidate would be, nobody had heard of Bill Clinton. So there's a possibility, a very good possibility, that nobody knows who the 2028 candidate even is right now. Like, maybe, I mean, some people, but most people wouldn't even recognize his name or her name on a sheet of paper. John Assa for the guy in Texas if he wins. Man, I so want Tallarico to win. I think I think he's only got, like, he's got his state legislature experience. I think he would need more than 2 years of Senate before he can become president, but I can see him becoming president someday. Ma'am Donnie, that's Mamdani, can't run. He's not a native born American citizen. You have to be a native born American citizen. But I like Mamdani a lot. Like former Prime Minister Gordon Brown said, all politicians have a shelf life, and eventually people will get fed up of you. Israel-Palestine is a lose-lose topic for American politics. You can't, and it's just like, because Biden was president, and it's funny that the people that attack Biden seem to just like not care that Trump has made it worse. They don't say anything about Trump. Nobody talks about Gaza anymore. Nobody talks about what Israel is doing in Lebanon. If they do, they're blaming Democrats who take money from AIPAC. It's like, it's weird that Democrats are the only party that is actually expected to govern. So anything that is wrong, that is a governance issue, Democrats get blamed for, even if the Republicans are the ones in power. Ross Perot for president in 1969 or 1996, and he said something: he would shut down the White House and work from his bedroom. That would have saved America a lot of money. I don't know if it would have. Ross Perot was a bit of a kook. He was right about one thing. He was right about NAFTA. AOC for VP. I'm not ready for her to retire yet. I like Elisa Slotkin and Mark Kelly as well. I like Mark Kelly. I don't know enough about Slotkin, but I like Mark Kelly. I'm just, I think we have a lot of really good talent in the Democratic Party. I have some issues with Newsom because he has said some things that are like anti-trans that bother me. So he is not my first choice or near it. But whoever the Republicans are running is going to be worse for trans people than him. Okay. So I got to get going now. Sorry, Mo, that you missed the first part of the show. But you are sure you know my views on it. But are you sure you know my views on asylum? I think that you have some pretty strong views on asylum, that people should stop in the country, the first safe country they come to. Okay. So I'm going to head out. Hope you guys have a fantastic evening, and I will see you again tomorrow.
Ran through the noise, now the pieces align. Pull back the curtain, let you see the design. Machine Punk Kelly, yeah, we played that game, but the truth stays steady while they shuffle the frame. He's still rising, but the signal cuts clean. What you saw tonight ain't just what it seemed. From the chaos to the calm, let it settle in slow. Take the light with you when you step out the show. Out clear, eyes up, don't fall for the spin. Hold that line when the noise rolls in.